I'm very pleased to see so many people out here on a Saturday night. I told my daughter I was going over to a session on the bank. She said, on Saturday night? I said, oh, yeah, we're doing our due diligence here. I'm Senator Marilyn Chase. This is a legislative function that we're having here tonight to discuss a project we've been working on for over 10 years. And I am very pleased to say my colleague, our leader on this, Senator Bob Hasagawa, started the bank activity back in '08. So we've got almost 10 years, and the first legislation was introduced in 2010, but we started talking about the bank '08, '09. And we now have almost at 10 years, and we have, we're making progress, we're making great success. And so it is with my distinct pleasure to present to you my colleague and our leader on the state bank, Senator Bob Hasagawa.
So I am just taking a backseat role on this because you all have heard about me, about proselytizing on this issue for too long. We have the privilege of having real experts from the Public Banking Institute. So it's my privilege to introduce them to you right now. I think everybody knows Ellen Brown, who is a famous author and sort of kicked all of this off with her Web of Debt some time ago, and brought everybody's attention to how important it is for us to pay attention to banking. Because banking, we all believe in public goods, electricity should be a public utility, water should be a public utility, because they're necessary generally for every resident. Well, the utility for an economy is money, and money should be publicly owned too. So that's where we're kind of going with this whole, what Ellen has been promoting and trying to draw people's attention to. She has just recently accepted a position as president of the Public Banking Institute again, which she actually was a co-founder of, but is moving back into this because of my second introduction here, Walt McCree, who is the outgoing president of the Public Banking Institute and very much also an expert on this whole subject. So without too much ado, well, I guess I should talk a little bit about where we're at in the state, because we've been making really good progress within the state of Washington. I've had bills on it every year, but this year we had a watermark event, is that what you call it? Because I had an amendment to put on the budget bill, because I look for opportunities to talk about this on the Senate floor, just to elevate the conversation. So I try not to wear that pathway out by talking about it too much, but every time they talk about having to bond again, it's another opportunity to raise the issue. But in the operating budget this year, I had an amendment to create a task force to study public banking for the state of Washington and to make recommendations to for the 2018 legislature to implement one. I actually got a majority of the votes to hang that amendment, 26 votes, which means there was Republicans that voted with us. One technical glitch was the Republicans had also changed the Senate rules because it now requires a supermajority to hang an amendment onto a budget bill that's been recommended by the Ways and Means Committee. So in lieu of that, that new rule, the amendment didn't hang, even though it had a majority. However, I was so pleased when they finally came out with the final budget that we just passed 2 weeks ago. They included my amendment into the budget. So we are going to be creating a task force this interim that's going to be created. It's going to be a four-corner task force. Senate Democrats, Senate Republicans, House Democrats, plus experts in the field to do the study this interim and come back with a set of recommendations for the 2018 legislature. So we are on a pathway to really make progress on this issue. I'm just so tickled to let you know about that. One other quick announcement, I guess. Thank you for coming to Parrington Hall. I'm sorry that we're back over here again. We had been shuffling around. Apparently the mayor's office took objection to us being in Kane Hall and made calls to the management of Kane Hall to sort of give us the boot out of there. So we're back here again. So that's why the back and forth on the location. But that aside, Parrington Hall is my alma mater. This is where the home of the Evans School of Public Policy and Governance, where I got my executive MPA. And I'm happy to say that I was the lead proponent for the budget proviso to remodel this place. So it's not going to be so stuffy in here. That's in the capital budget if we can ever pass a capital budget, which is stuck in the legislature right now. So, but that being said, it's my honor to introduce Walpre. I guess I did introduce you. You can give a better resume.
Introduce myself?
Yeah, if you don't mind. But we are privileged to have this expertise here because it is such a crucial issue facing the state and our city coming up.
Thank you very much, Senator Zagala. What a pleasure to be here, you all, as they say in Oregon. I'm from the East Coast, so it's great to be here because I'd like to live here, but I know you can't find any place to live here, so I'm staying put for a little while. I want to show you something that I'm trying to, oh, here we are, yes. I think you'll like this.
Ernie!
We need millions of people to stand together, to take on corporate America, to take on Wall Street.
An event about a month, 2 months ago. And again, this is a grassroots effort around the country. People do what they can. People could make videos, and in this case, they did a great job. You can feel the energy that comes out of this effort because people are suddenly getting a fix on the kind of a fix that they're in. You know, we have a systemic problem, and people are now getting wise to how it's organized, not in our interest, but it's organized in specialists, in private interests. And that is, so that's our job here. I want to thank the senators this year. We had a really terrific gathering with 6 senators and the chair of the Commerce Committee of Washington, and a number of principals from the ports and from the Department of Commerce and from the Treasurer's Office. It was really a great focused engagement on what the steps will be necessary to go forward. So we're excited about that. I want to thank them for having us here and this opportunity tonight. I'm going to give you a couple of introductory remarks to kind of set the stage for why this is important now. And then I'm going to turn things over to Ellen, who will give you a sense of, or a look at some of the background understanding, what money is, what banking is, how banking works. Sure, I'm thinking. Put on my notes here. Turn it on, right? But so, thank you. Well, we usually have staff for this. All right, give us all right, so we're going to cover the ground. There will be both the bit of the theory, and then the specifics, and then I'm going to come back on when Ellen's done and tell you what's going on around the country. I've been privileged to work with this for about 6 years now, which is basically I'm an old timer, but it's exciting to see what has happened with the whole movement, because public banking in the United States is a new thing. Not true. It is an old thing. It goes right back to our founding, right back to the Quakers, who built the American economy on a system of giving credit to people who needed it, which was everybody. As Senator Hasagawa said, we all need, the credit is the lifeblood of an economy. And when you can't get it, things don't work. It's the oil that makes things work. So making sure that people have credit is a functional part, it's a utility. And so there's some mind shifting I'd like you to entertain tonight. We want to kind of demythologize some of the notions of what money is, how banking works, and whether or not you and we have a right to be able to manage this institution ourselves. So first let's take a look at what some of the quick facts of what a public bank is. The public banks that we're talking about are not retail banks. The banks we're talking about are not places that you go for car loans, mortgages, or student loans or anything. They do not compete with local banker interests, with community banks, and with credit unions. And that's a very important part of that, of the picture, because we want these local community institutions, financial institutions, to thrive, which these days they're not doing so well in. Excuse me, it's a Marco Rubio moment. You can use that. Yeah, so, and the reason for this is that as we all get increasingly disenfranchised from the global economy, we realize increasing unemployment around the world, people who live in scarcity and austerity are living in a world where the wealth is so concentrated that we don't have a chance, primarily because the money is controlled by private interests. And that is a realm or a regime that's been going on for thousands of years, okay? Thousands of years. So not much has changed. But going back to what these banks are and are not, a public bank is not only some place you don't go for your borrowing, but also is not a charity. So we're not giving money away here to good causes. And it's not a lender of last resort. So it's not making the loans that no one else will make. It's a great way to break a bank, by the way. You give people money who don't have projects that are viable, their business plans are terrible, they might not be reliable themselves, so it's not one of those. The public bank operates within a mission, so it has a purpose that's pretty well defined, ultimately. And I want to say, as we were talking yesterday with the senators, we're saying, we want to have a broad enough purpose so that it can include a lot of variations of that. In North Dakota, it's agriculture industry and the commonwealth of the state, as it's defined by the board of directors and citizen stakeholders. We want to have that as well. Now, you saw a lovely laundry list of things, some of the things that people would like to have. And want to be quite frank with you, you probably won't be able to start the bank working at that level, but it will get there if that's what the people want. So all of that stuff is totally doable. It may not happen right away because the bank has to be stabilized. Anyway, that's another, so it's got a mission, okay? They are owned by the governments, but they're not run by the government, okay? They have a professional banker management team that is independent of special interests and political cycles. That's a key importance because people always say, what, you're going to give the politicians a bank? What, are you crazy? And from New Jersey, this is, I don't know how you feel about it out here, but it's true on the East Coast. Nobody really trusts the government, which is, by the way, I think something we ought to consider changing. We should be able to expect integrity in our government. We should expect good service. These are things that we can insist on. Now, every city, county, and state is going to have a different look to their public bank. They will all take different shapes, but they will all be geared around what the local economic interest needs, of the state or city, and that's again determined by the stakeholders who are actually on either the board of directors or the citizen advisory group. So, all right, I made the distinction. I'm sorry? No, I don't have the power all. Yeah, no, this is just me. She's got all the fancy stuff here. Yeah. So that's the distinction we're making when we talk about banks. There's Wall Street banks, and then there are community and credit unions and community banks are really critical. And as I mentioned, they're having tough days because of the low spread of the interest rates. It's difficult to do business as a community bank. They are under pressure to make profits with a lot of regulation, and they are disappearing. And systemically, that is a very bad thing, because as our neighborhoods and our towns lose access to local credit, you have to allow yourself to go through the process of the computers that are owned by Wells and BOA in distant cities that don't know you and don't have any direct connection. So it's important for our local economies, the future of our cities and state, it depends on what we do here. And that's one of the things about why we want to have a bank, because we want to keep our money here and lend to ourselves. It's really a very simple sort of logic, but no brainer, right? So the problem that we have, fundamentally, systemically, is that we rely on having to borrow our money from private interests, from private capital interests. We're not a poor state, you're not a poor state, there really are very few poor states, I suppose you have to look down south. But by and large, states and cities and counties have a lot of money stashed in a lot of places. This state is a perfect example of that. And so we have a lot of equity, a lot of assets. And the analogy that I think really makes sense is that if you were wanting to make a home improvement and you needed $50,000 and you had that down in a shoebox in the basement, you know, stashed away for a special day, like when you wanted to have it in the kitchen or something. The question would be, well, the way we do it now, what we would do as the body politic in Washington or Seattle, is that we would go to the bond market, basically our next door neighbor, and say, hey, can you give us some money? And he'd say, sure, I can give you money. It's going to cost you 5%, and it's going to, you know, and there will be some fees involved. So we borrow money unnecessarily. Really what you would do, obviously, is go into the basement and get the money, obviously, right? You would pay for it yourself. You wouldn't take on any additional debt. So, but that's what we're doing now because we don't have access to this equity. And that's what the bank does, is liquefies these assets so that we can finally use them. So, as I mentioned, you know, this rule of private control of money and capital, going back thousands of years, it created an important rule that we all know, which is called the golden rule. The golden rule. You know, he or she who has the gold makes the rules. Which is why we say that the idea of having a public bank re-democratizes our money. It gives us the power to make policy. And you can see how ineffective democracy has been in realizing results for the people. When the special interests and the moneyed interests get to do what they want with the money, while we have to beg and be supplicants to get some of our own. This undermines democracy, certainly, but it also seriously affects public policy because those interests are not reflected in the law. You may recall a Princeton study that was done a couple of years ago that indicated that over the last 40 years, when they looked at it, there was an insignificant level of influence of public interest in the outcomes of public policy. So, and of course, you see it demonstrated most powerfully and perhaps tragically in Greece, where even though Syriza, the party that took over the government in 2015, said, we don't want any more of your money from the EU because the banks were pouring it in there. They said, we don't care about your vote. 65% of the people decided they didn't want this. And the EU, basically the global financial interests, said, we're going to take this or we're going to close down more banks. close down your banks. And you see, that is the important linchpin on how they have us, this web of debt that Ellen talks about as a literal component by closing down your banks, they close down your economy. They keep you from doing and having the things that you want. So having a bank is a structurally and systemically important thing for us to do, to not only change that, but to hopefully turn it around for good, or begin the process of turning it around for good. And of course, the capital interests, as they consolidate, have created this huge aberration of fairness, where 5 people on the planet now have more money than the bottom 3.75 billion people. 5 people on the planet have more asset wealth than half of us. So this is unacceptable, and of course it's unsustainable. So even though we have to continue to push, as I admire the persistence here, but we all have to persist in understanding that we're being had, we are acquiescing to a system that we don't have to have. We have been told that banking is a special sort of a magic. There certainly is alchemy in it, and Ellen's going to tell you about what that is in a moment. But it is something that we can have. Nobody said that the special interests are the only ones that can have a bank. The people can have a bank. And again, as Ellen will tell you, they're all over the world, and they do very, very well. All right. Well, I think I'm going to turn it over to Ellen now. I am going to turn it over to Ellen now. I've talked for a long time, but the point here is that we're making a systemic change. Each of us has an understanding that at this moment in history, but we all see that government responsibility is responsibility to private interests more than the people. When we see good people who are working hard in the government to try to make a change, as we've seen around the country in the public banking world, they get to a certain point, and the big bank, the private interests squash it. But there are breakthroughs happening. Some of them are in this room, but I'll tell you about that in just a moment. Ellen Brown.
Thanks, Bob. Testing. Can you hear? 1, 2, 3.
It's got a really short range, that mic.
Testing. Testing. Sure range.
Is that working better?
Yeah, I have to hold it up way close.
Could you flip it on that fan?
Yeah, but I think it would be. All right, great. So it's great to be
No,
here.
yeah, that one.
Okay. It's great to be here.
It's not working. Yeah, that's
Can
right.
you shout?
It's barely on.
It doesn't work, does it?
Okay, I'm good at this. All right, so you all did super work, and we really had a wonderful workshop yesterday. I was very impressed with all the progress that had been made and all the really sincere interest in actually working something out, as opposed to finding reasons why it won't work. There was a whole room full of people that were all looking for making it work and how we could make it work and where we could find the money, and it looks very doable. So the first question is, why do we need a public bank? We've got plenty of banks, and the city and the state have plenty of loan funds that make loans for different things. So why do we particularly need our own bank? And the first reason is, the reason that the loan funds aren't sufficient is that with a loan fund, a revolving fund, you get, like, let's say you start with $1 million. You lend out $1 million at 5%, you wait for it to come back, and then you lend it out again. And if it's a long-term loan, you can't use that money in the meantime, you can only use it once. So you made basically 5% on your money, and you can't, if you need it short-term, you're out of luck, there's no way you can get it. With a bank, you can leverage. So you can take that $1 million, turn it into capital, and you can make 10 times that sum in loans. And you'll get interest on all those loans. And there's something called liquidity transformation, which means you can turn your $1 million into, you can get that money out. Like, these are all demand deposits. So a demand deposit is where when you go in and demand the money, they'll come up with it. They don't necessarily have it. That's what a demand deposit means. They say, we'll make it available to you on demand. And so I'll show you how they do that. And the problem is, of course, private banks do this all the time, but the problem is they're very expensive for us. There was a study recently in Los Angeles of the cost of Wall Street fees. We're not talking about interest, but the fees on top of the interest, just the fees for doing the work of banking. It turned out we're actually more than we were paying for our roads, and we have a serious road situation in LA. And this type of information is very hard to find because the fees, for some reason, are considered proprietary information. It's not out there for the public to find. So you can assume that it's true for other cities and it's true for many other things related to banking. That's one problem, is everything is hidden in off-balance sheets. There are many, like they use collateral several different ways. They rehypothecate, as it's called. So you never know whether your money is secure, and you never know where it is. And we saw with the last banking crisis that it could all collapse at any moment. And even the Federal Reserve said, Janet Yellen said, we didn't expect that. I mean, how could they? These are the people at the top of our banking system did not predict the collapse of 2008. And Ben Bernanke said the same thing. So we have a very unpredictable, inscrutable, vulnerable system. So school districts are paying like 300% on what's called subprime loans for school districts. They're capital appreciation bonds. I saw one that was actually 1,500%. So this is where, because the school districts can't borrow, they're all borrowed up, and they need buildings of some sort. So they borrow from Wall Street, or actually it's the Goldman Sachs people that come to them and sort of huckster these loans that look like a good deal because they don't have to pay anything for 30 years. But in 30 years or 40 years, the grandkids get hit with this huge bill for a piece of property that's probably not even any good anymore. So that's what we're doing to our grandchildren. And then if the government doesn't have the money, they wind up selling off their public assets, which means that we, the users, pay. So we pay for tolls and fees, and private equity wants 8 to 18% now. So if they build the thing, we're going to be paying on average 12% instead of, well, North Dakota is making infrastructure loans for 2%. Washington has serious funding needs. They have a budget shortfall of $1.6 billion. So this is one thing we talked about yesterday. You can be pretty sure they're not going to agree to an appropriation to capitalize the bank. So we're going to have to find our money somewhere else. But they definitely need new sources of funding. You have an affordable housing shortage, just like we have in LA. And at least $180 billion needed for infrastructure. So interestingly, 50% of the cost of infrastructure is financing. And this is just accepted as a general rule, that it's like interest on top of the cost of your infrastructure is going to be interest. So these are two examples for California. The Bay Bridge retrofit was $6 billion. I mean, that's what the voters were told, it was going to be $6 billion. But by the time they pay the interest on it, it's going to be $12 billion. The bullet train, the voters were told it was going to be $10 billion, and by the time they pay the interest just on that, it's going to be $20 billion. And I've seen huge estimates beyond that, like 80 or 90 billion. So if we could borrow from ourselves, we could cut infrastructure costs in half. But then the state, you know, the politicians, the treasury will say, well, we don't have the money to lend. We need the money for our budget. But as Walt pointed out, the state actually has plenty of money. The problem is that we can't reach it. So in California, we have $600 billion, it's been calculated, that you can find in the comprehensive annual financial reports, most of which is a pension fund, so it's $500 billion. There's, I think, $76 billion or something now in the Treasurer's investment pool, and then other funds around the state. So that's a huge pile of money, and we worry because we're over budget, like by $1 billion or $2 billion or something. And here you've got all this money that you can't tap. And here in Washington, you have $90 billion in your public pension funds. Now, and if you were to do a Seattle bank, you just have to go down on the numbers a bit, but you've got the same thing. You've got pension fund money, you've got the state has local government investment pool and treasury money of at least $15 billion, and then apparently there are county and local funds that are also tappable. But the problem with the state revenues, you can't do it through you can't lend it through a revolving fund because all that money has been earmarked. It's got to be available if or when needed. It's like rainy day funds or the pension fund money or the federal or the state budget. You may have cost overruns, so that's why you have that cushion there. But that's what a bank does. A bank can turn short-term deposits into long-term loans. And the reason they can do it is they don't actually lend their deposits. They actually create the money they lend on their books. This used to be considered conspiracy theory. And in fact, when I first started talking about it, I said this yesterday, that I had told a woman who was from the Sacramento and knocking on doors, and she's one of our great advocates. And I said, well, you got to tell them that the bank actually creates money. And she said, I can't tell them that. They're going to think I'm a conspiracy man. So, you can get people to say this. But now, the Bank of England has actually come out and said it, and the Bundesbank just a couple of months ago said it in a report, that the Bank of England said, contrary to popular belief, banks do not act simply as intermediaries, lending out deposits that savers place with them. Commercial banks create money in the form of bank deposits by making new loans. In fact, they said bank deposits make up 97% of the money in circulation. So that's like our whole money supply is deposits. These deposits they write the money into your deposit account, and that's where it comes from. And I'll go a little into the history of it, but the way this came about was that originally we were issuing our own money, our own paper money as colonies, until King George forbade the practice, which created a Great Depression because there was a shrinkage in the money supply. And so the colonists went back to printing their own money, and this was considered an act of rebellion, which precipitated or was one of the major causes of the American Revolution. And then we funded the revolution by printing our own money, which Benjamin Franklin thought was an amazing thing, that we had won a war against the world superpower at the time just by printing the money. We didn't have any money, we just printed it. However, by the end of the war, the Continental was worth virtually nothing. And so this was largely because the British had been counterfeiting it as a war tactic. But anyway, the currency collapsed. So the Founding Fathers were afraid to put it in the Constitution. So it doesn't say that Congress shall have the power to print money. It only says Congress shall have the power to coin money. So the official money to start out with was gold and silver coins. but there were not enough gold and silver coins to go around, and so the bank stepped in with this practice that had been going on in England of issuing banknotes. It's called fractional reserve lending, where they would issue their own, a banknote is a promissory note. So it's the bank's credit, the bank's promise to pay, that they would lend, and they soon discovered that they could lend 10 times as many notes as they had gold. Supposedly these notes were all backed by gold, but they could lend 10 times as many as they had gold because most people didn't come for their gold. They didn't want to carry it around, it wasn't safe, it wasn't convenient, so they used the banknotes as money. So that's where this 10 to 1 thing came from. Then in the 1860s, with the National Bank Act, the attempt was to get all the local banks to join the national banking system. So they heavily taxed the paper banknote. So the banks quit issuing their own notes, and they started this new practice where they would make the loan just by writing the money into your account, and then they gave you a checkbook. So you were effectively writing the banknote when you signed this checkbook. I mean, the check was really a banknote, but it wasn't called that, so it didn't get taxed. So when you write that check, you are actually creating money. You and the bank together are turning your promise to pay into money, into a form of money that's acceptable in the marketplace. So that's where virtually our entire money supply comes from today, which is a neat trick, and that's what we want to do. We want to recapture that. If we want to get back the power to create money that we lost when the federal government failed to take it at the Constitutional Convention, we need to do what the banks are doing. In other words, issue the money as a form of credit issued through our own bank. So here's how they do it technically. When you go to the bank and you take out a $500,000 mortgage to buy a house, the bank will write that on one side of its books as a liability to itself because they have to cover that check when it goes into the seller's bank. And then they'll write it on the other side of their books as an asset to themselves because you are going to pay that over time with interest, probably as much as interest as you paid in principal. So they say, well, it all balances, the books balance, it all comes out to zero. But when your check goes into the seller's bank is going to see that as $500,000, a new deposit, new money coming in from somewhere else. So that is counted as a new deposit, and that's how they figure the money supply, all these new deposits coming in. And let's say you had two banks, here I used $100,000, but let's say you had two banks each creating a $100,000 mortgage, and the check goes into the other bank. Both banks' books balance. They've got $100,000 going out, $100,000 going in, it all comes at zeros. They say, see, we haven't created anything. But between the two of them, they have actually created $200,000 that was not there before. That's the way they count the money supply. M2 includes checks, checkbook money. And if the bank is not so fortunate as to get $100,000 in, balance $100,000 out, they can borrow. They borrow overnight. They used to borrow from other banks at the Fed funds rate. But since the Federal Reserve, in its infinite wisdom, started paying interest on excess reserves, they're now paying 1.25% on excess reserves. So the banks aren't lending to each other much anymore, because why should they if they can get 1.25% from the Fed? So instead, they borrow from the shadow banks, principally the Federal Home Loan Banks, and that's what our bank can do too. You can borrow from the Federal Home Loan Banks at 1% now, which is pretty much where the floor is because of the reverse repo of the rate, but I won't try to go into that.
Is that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac?
Sorry?
Is that Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac or Federal Home Loan
No,
Banks?
Federal Home Loan Banks are a system that virtually all banks belong to. You have to be doing 10% real estate related, but that's all. Chase Bank uses them
So
for
it's
their
their books.
Sorry?
It's on their books.
Who's one?
And
I'm trying to understand the Federal Home Loan Banks.
yeah, okay, so it's a big system of banks lending to each other, basically. Or you take your loans to the Federal Home Loan Bank, and they basically liquefy it for it. I mean, they'll use your loan as collateral and
So it's a
they'll turn it
pool of
into
debt.
short-term. Sorry?
Pool of debt.
Yeah, pretty much. but it's huge, and it's got a lot of perks from the government. It's really technically private, but it looks like one of these it is subsidized by the government, and so it has a lot of credibility, and it's always there, and it's cheap. Oh, so you can borrow from the Federal Home Loan Banks at 1.36% for a 3-month loan. So let's say, for example, one of these things the Treasury is worried about, what happens when right before tax time they have this sudden crunch where they lose a couple billion in their cash flow. We can just borrow from the Federal Home Loan Banks one of these longer term loans, like 3-month loan. So when I do my figures, I calculate that in, and maybe it's 1.1% for the whole year, let's say on average. Then there's the question, so Wall Street controls all our money. The question is, can we trust them? Are these the people we want to control our money? It used to be, we actually thought they were, but we've seen so much in the last decade that people have grown highly suspicious. It really is the time for a revolution in banking because people are ready for that. People are very upset with the whole banking system. They can gamble with our money. Technically, they own your money when you put your money in the bank. It is no longer your money. All you have is an IOU. You become a creditor of the bank. They can do with your money as they will. They can lend very cheaply to themselves and their cronies and lend very expensively to us. They cannot lend at all, creating a shortage of money, which actually serves them because it makes more demand for loans. And these banks, as we now know, have been caught in over a dozen felonies, including interest rate rigging, which has been very expensive for state and local governments, bid rigging on muni bond debt, also very expensive, and other forms of fraud, like the recent Wells Fargo 2 million fake accounts. And Wells Fargo is the big bank that the city of LA uses. So this movement, the LA Bernie crap movement, they want to move their money out of Wells Fargo. But
Seattle uses Wells Fargo.
Sorry?
Seattle's disinvesting from Wells Fargo.
Yeah, so if you move money out of Wells Fargo, where are you going to put it? So that's why we need a bank. We need a place to put it. Oh, wait, there you go. Okay, and Wall Street triggered this recent collapse. So we lost 9 million jobs, 10 million foreclosures, 19 trillion in total household wealth, and the governments have assumed the debts, the national governments assumed the debts globally of their banks. So now the national governments are in debt, and I mean, you all know the story. So then they're forced to sell out their public assets and tighten their belts, which makes us tighten our belts. So the question is, why are we still doing business with these big banks? I mean, normally, if you have a business that routinely gets into trouble and goes bankrupt, they're out of business. But for some reason, our banking system, we keep it afloat, and they actually call the shots in Washington. Why is that? And the reason is because they're creating our money supply. This was said by the credit manager of the Federal Reserve Bank of Atlanta in 1934. Robert Hemphill, he said, we are completely dependent on the commercial banks. Someone has to borrow every dollar we have in circulation, cash or credit. If the banks create ample synthetic money, we are prosperous. If not, we starve. So that's what we want. We want our own banks that can create money countercyclically. In other words, when the other banks aren't lending, we want a backup that will lend to us. We want a source of our own money that's working for us and not working for shareholders. So how can we fix the situation on the bank themselves? Globally, this is not an uncommon idea. And I think in the 70s, 50% of banks were publicly owned. In the 90s, 40% were publicly owned. But then we had this big wave of privatization, so now we're down to 22%. But still, it's a well-known phenomenon globally to have the government own the banks. This includes the largest banks in the world, including the 2 largest by market cap in China, the largest by deposits in Japan, the largest by number of branches in India, the largest development bank in China, and the world's 7th safest banks, including KfW in Germany. In Germany, the Sparkassen banks have 1/3 of the German banking assets, 15,600 branches. So this is huge. We're not just talking one branch like Bank of North Dakota or 2 now. And there was a study in 2015 that found that the Sparkassen banks were actually more profitable than the commercial banks. Economic miracles have occurred in countries with strong public banking sectors, including this list. The one that particularly stands out is China, which has had for a decade, they had 10% growth every year. How did they possibly pull that off? While we're just arguing about high-speed rail, in the last decade, they've built 12,000 miles of high-speed rail. They've built the world's largest dam and power station, and that's just one. I mean, they're planning to do it all over the country. And how did they fund it? Their secret is they own 80% of it. So I think I saw something about how they funded high-speed rail. 50% of it is funded through their publicly owned banks. So that means they do like all banks do, which is issue the money in the form of a loan, and then the loan is paid back with the proceeds of the dam or the railroad, just as Roosevelt did in the 1930s with the Reconstruction Finance Corporation. These are called self-funding loans, the type of infrastructure loan that pays for itself because it produces something that is a productive asset. So we, U.S., have one publicly owned depository bank, and that's in North Dakota, which I'm sure you've heard of by now, but they were the only state to escape the credit crisis in 2008-2009. They had the nation's lowest unemployment rate, one of the lowest foreclosure rates, the lowest default rate on student debt and credit card debt. And in 2014, the Wall Street Journal came out with an article that said that the Bank of North Dakota was more profitable than Goldman Sachs and had a better credit rating than JP Morgan Chase. They had a return on equity of 18.56%, about 70% higher than at Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan. Now that article attributed it to oil, but that was when oil was at its height, and then right after that, oil just plunged. And you can see that in 2008, 2009, when they were the only state to escape the credit crisis, the oil was down in the doldrums still, and then it came up, and then it collapsed, but still, in the last 12 years, the Bank of North Dakota has had record profits every year, greater than the last. So obviously, their profits are not a product of oil.
And they're not paying $1 billion salaries.
Sorry?
They're not paying exorbitant compensation to the banking.
Right, they don't, yeah. So what is their secret? The Bank of North Dakota has a very efficient business model. They don't pay bonuses, fees, or commissions. They don't have any high-paid CEOs. They don't have private shareholders. They don't advertise. They don't need to advertise for deposits because by law, all of the state's deposits are deposited in the Bank of North Dakota. So they have a built-in captive deposit base. They don't need to advertise for borrowers because they partner with the local banks. So the local banks are like the front office that go around and deal with the customer, underwriting standards, and all the things that banks do. And then the Bank of North Dakota comes in with the loans that they like, and they participate in the loans. So they might provide, I saw typically they'll provide 90% of the capital. So these are loans like, say, some sort of development in a little town that the town really needs, but they don't really have any banks big enough to make the loan. But the bank will do the legwork on the loan, and then the Bank of North Dakota comes in and helps with capital, helps with liquidity, and allows them to make these much larger loans. So it's quite easy for the Bank of North Dakota. They're really just a funding source. They're not doing all those details. Yeah.
Question, are the banks just chartered locally in North Dakota? Are these banks?
These are local banks, yeah, they have 6 times as many small banks, local banks, as any state, banks per capita as any state in the country. And the big banks aren't really there. These are the local banks. The Bankers Association endorses the Bank of North Dakota. They love it because it's a partner. Yeah. They don't need branches. They don't need ATMs, etc. They have a few individual depositors, but only 2 or 3%. And that's just because it's they're a public bank. They probably should take a few deposits. So they pass their savings on, not to their shareholders, but to the communities and borrowers. They make 2% loans for infrastructure, which is nationally, infrastructure is 4 to 6%. They make student loans at 2% below the federal rate. They make 1% loans for startup farms and businesses, and low interest loans for affordable housing. So let's say Washington wanted to do this with, in California, my projections were that they could use the pension funds to get the capital. Because in California, the pension funds can invest in anything. And we were actually approached by a pension fund that wanted to buy a bank and said, well, it was in San Francisco, and they said, we'll pay for half if the city pays for half. So they're not opposed to that at all. But apparently here, your pension funds are not as open to that idea, but we heard yesterday there are other sources, other funds that sounds like they would be open to put in the capital. So let's say I was figuring 5% for pension funds because that's what they're looking for. So let's say they put in $100 million at 5%, and then you get $1 billion in deposits from your local government investment pool, treasury, local funds. There are a lot of funds around that could be used as deposits. So these are just deposits. They're not paying money. They're not lending their money. They're just depositing their money in a bank, just like they would be putting it in a Wall Street bank. They can get it out at any time. That's the way banking works. And then they're getting 1% right now, all those pools. So let's pay them let's assume 1.1% because we might have to do a little borrowing on that from the federal home loan banks. So you can take your $100 million allows you to, at a 10% capital rate, you can have $1 billion in assets. So let's say you have $1 billion in loans, less 10% reserve requirements. So you can make $900 million in loans. Let's say at 3%. I know B&D's doing it at 2%, but interest rates are going up, and B&D doesn't have to worry about capital. They've got their own capital base. So let's say we did 3%. That's still better than the 4 to 6 national average. So you're making $27 million, less $16 million cost of funds, less another $3 million, let's say, for loan loss, which is about what B&D withholds for loan losses. That's for like defaults. So you're making $8 million times 12 and a half years. In 12 and a half years, you would have enough money to pay back your capital investment. And after that, you'd be making $13 million. So that's a 13% return on $100 million. I mean, this is a year of $100 million after you've paid off the original capital investment. So that's not quite as good as B&D's doing, but you could do as well as the B&D. You could do. Yeah. There is a big push for that. Certainly in California, there's a huge push for a cannabis bank. That from the politicians themselves, the Treasury Department wants it because they want that $1 billion in taxes that they're calculating they're going to get every year. So, and the cannabis people are really looking for a place to put their money. So they're not going to be asking for 1% on their deposits. They're going to be happy to have a place to put it. In fact, they might pay the bank to have a place to put it. There will be an issue of, there's all those reporting requirements which cost money, but there are now computer programs that can handle that. And there'll probably be a fee for the computer program, but that would be up to the customer, I would think. It's not a cost to the bank, it's something you would add to the customer's cost. So if you can get, in other words, if you can get your deposits for free, you could pay off your capital in 5.25 years, and after that you would own the capital. You don't have to pay on deposits. You could be making $24 million so 24% annually, and that's making loans at 3%. Now, if you're making loans at the ordinary market rate, you know interest rates are going up, so probably you could be making 6 or 7% loans and make a lot more than that. But I'm saying even at making low-cost loans, you can still make a 24% profit, which you saw was way more than Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan are making. And then there's a question of how to keep the bank honest. Those same digital, they now have these new digital blockchain systems that allow for full transparency, full accountability. You can get rid of all this hidden stuff that's going on, off-balance sheet stuff, and rehypothecation, blockchain. You can't rehypothecate. In other words, well, I won't try to go into it, but there are ways now to make things fully accountable and transparent. You would use targeted lending, very strict underwriting standards. In other words, you don't lend to people that can't pay it back. And you don't allow speculation, you don't pay bonuses, fees, or commissions, so there's no incentive to speculate. The people working there are just civil servants doing their job. Studies actually show that public banks are safer, this is globally, less corrupt, more efficient, and more profitable than private commercial banks. And in the event of a crisis, they lend countercyclically. So when the other banks are pulling back, the public banks are lending more because it's a public policy to do that. So that's all I've got, but I do want to address this one other thing that I know will come up or has come up, which is this constitutional provision against lending to credit of the state. And so when the first bill came around, I'm sure some lobbyists said, find a way to kill that bill, and they came up with this constitutional provision and say, well, that's kills it. But first of all, you've already got, like we all, every government has funds that lend the money of the government. So they're already in violation of this provision, if that's what it means. And it doesn't say that they won't lend money. It says they won't lend their credit. So I'll just go briefly into the history of that. In 1837, there was a huge, this is, if you check the legislative history, this is where these bills came from. 45 of the states incorporated those bills in the mid-19th century. And it came from, in 1837, there was a depression after Andrew Jackson shut down the second U.S. bank. And so there were all these companies that went bankrupt, including these railroad companies, and there are various towns that had guaranteed the loans of the railroad companies, thinking that if the railroads came into the town, it would bring business. So when those companies went bankrupt, the towns were on the hook for the loan. So that's what these statutes mean, is that basically you can't guarantee the loans of a corporation or of a private party. So it doesn't apply here, and if it does apply, every state and city and county in the country is guilty of violating it because they already lend the money of the local government. So that's all I've got. These are for more information, you can go to our website, publicbankinginstitute.org, or my website, ellenbrown.com, where I have over 300 articles on this subject, and my two books are interested.
Thank you, Ellen Brown. Ellen, those figures that she pointed out here, I'm just going to take a couple of minutes before we get into questions and answers, just to bring you up to speed on what's going on around the country, but also to make some reference to some figures. And the Senator's can check me on this, but I looked at the percentage of the state budget, of your state budget today, that is paid into debt. It's 5.4% of a $94 billion budget, which comes out to over $5 billion in debt that is leaving y'all's pockets to pay for borrowing money, $5.4 billion. And the budget shortfall this season is $1.8 billion. You know, so it's a situation that just doesn't seem to make much sense. But it is the reality of our circumstance. It's what we have to deal with. Of course, it should be one of the drivers of why we can change this. Also, the figures that Ellen mentioned about, what the percentage of return on the way the bank operates, that's what falls into a category called non-tax revenue. And non-tax revenue